What's going on, everybody? Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Time for the Hurricane Outlook and discussion. We're up to Tuesday, the 4th of October, 2022, and we got a lot to talk about. All of a sudden, again, a little bit of a break for a day or two, and now things are starting to look a little bit more interesting, and interesting should be in quotes there. And what is it? Well, we got a new depression trying to form east of the Caribbean, it looks like, and then probably another one even farther out into the Atlantic off the Cabo Verde Islands. So things are staying busy. We thought it would do this into October. The pattern finally changed. Not that anyone was particularly excited about it doing that. I mean, hurricanes are rough. They're interesting to track, that's for sure. They are very mysterious and intriguing, but the consequences of when they hit land, well, we have seen exactly those consequences. So here we are. Things are starting to pick up again, so let's see what we've got. In the Atlantic Basin, here's 91L, 70% chance of formation over the next several days. This is going to track into the Caribbean. I'll show you that in a moment on the 5-day version of this map. And then 92L out here, well on its way to becoming our next depression as well, or next after the next, depending on which one goes first. I think both of these do become named storms eventually, and we'll just keep adding to the list slowly but surely, or taking off the list, or checking off the list, however you want to look at it. Boost the ace points, all that stuff. But this one right here, we do need to watch it because it will be bringing impacts to our friends down in the Windward Islands, and that is not to be dismissed. Heavy rain, squally weather, that could be a big problem. We know that. We really have to emphasize impacts over categories and stuff like that, and that is basically my mantra. If you've been watching me for any length of time, you know it's about the impacts and not what we classify these as. Those are just labels. Nevertheless, the label right now, this one is 91L, and this one out here is 92, and these are the 5-day areas that they should track into. So what do they look like? First, I don't want to neglect, in the East Pack, we do have Tropical Storm Pain, and it is just sitting out over the eastern Pacific here, not going to bother anybody. Real quick, just want to slide this over that coastal storm nor'easter. Well, it's not a nor'easter, but mid-latitude storm. Got some of the remnants of Ian in it. It's sitting about up here, or something like that. We'll look at it on satellite in a moment. That is still causing some wind and waves and so forth and so on. And we'll just take a look real quick at our cameras down here in Rodanthe. A couple of people out here on the pier enjoying a nice stroll there in the brisk northwest wind today. The winds are out of the northwest along the Outer Banks, so the waves are not quite as bad. But if we zoom in here, we can see, yes, the water, these waves are coming up underneath these houses here. They are very close to the shore there. Yes, they are. The beach has been eroding. Just so you know, a long time, look, there's somebody going out in the water right there. A long time ago, probably even before I was born, the beach used to be out here, and there used to be a road out here. For real. So it's not like these people came and built their houses right there. It's a barrier island. Things change, and again, the debate as to whether or not people should even be there, that is not for me to decide today. Just wanting to show you what's happening out there. At least, though, the waves have not come under this dune system right here. And that's nice. That's the good thing about our permanent cameras that our supporters host for us, so that we can keep an eye on some conditions around the globe, or at least the Western Hemisphere for now. All right, so moving on, the satellite animation here. That's the storm system I was talking about. There's an upper level low sitting over here, surface low sitting offshore, and that surface low, bring me back on for a second, does have the remnants of Ian in there. The vorticity, the energy, that's still there. We are still talking about Ian coming up on a week since its landfall. That's tomorrow, of course, since it was a week ago. A week ago today, we were out setting up our network of cameras and weather stations. Hard to believe, but yes, it's still up there, plaguing the mid-Atlantic states. Just a miserable, nasty, cold, dreary kind of day. Not that cold. I mean, it's not wintertime cold yet, but kind of get up under the blanket and just stay in bed type weather. And lots of rain up in New Jersey, especially. I've been seeing a couple people tweeting about that. They were like, update, still raining. Update, it's still raining. An update later on, yep, still raining. Eventually, this will all move out. I'll show you that on the modeling in just a moment. Zooming in real quick, though, this is our system of greatest concern right now. clearly some kind of a low-level circulation right there. And you might look at that and go, well, it is sheared. It's moving on off through the islands there. What's the big deal? It looks like it's a big mess to me. Well, that's why you got to look closer. Look in here. These low clouds are streaming in, and there seems to be a more vigorous mid-level circulation trying to develop down here. Certainly has pretty good outflow overall. There is some northerly shear coming down. You can see that. Even some westerly shear at different levels of the atmosphere. Overall, though, the environment is pretty favorable. A lot of moisture down here. All that dry air and anticyclonic wave-breaking stuff is not really an issue anymore. Now we're in the meat of the season, and these systems will take advantage of a favorable environment when and if they can. And so, as I was talking, it is not a little L, it's not a little dot if you're tracking it, it's not a hurricane symbol like that. It's this, that's the whole thing. When someone says, well, do you think it's going to track near Barbados? Yes, I do. That whole thing is going to track near Barbados. Is the low pressure center, whether it's this or if there's another one forming in here, will that track near Barbados? Maybe. And that's just the example I'm trying to set here. That's the weather feature that we all need to watch, and all of that is going to move off in this direction, covering a lot of these islands down here. And so that could bring flooding, mudslides, just, power outages. If it's really starting to ramp up, it could get pretty windy. And that's what we track here. That's what we do. We look at the whole picture, not just focusing on how strong is it going to be, and if it doesn't meet a certain criteria, I don't care. Some people think that way, and that's fine. I'm probably never going to change their mind and how they look at it. But that's the big entirety of the picture, the whole picture there, all right? All right, so looking at the vorticity, that's another helpful tool. Most of the energy is farther to the south here. That little low-level deal is more up here, but the energy seems to be coalescing more to the south, and it won't surprise me if this takes over, and then we track this into the Caribbean. And more than likely, if this goes somewhere into Central America down here, more than likely, but that's still a few days away, and things can change. This is the vorticity associated with that coastal storm, the remnants of Ian sitting right in there as well. Yep, that's still there. And then here's our system out here, 92L, and by the way, that's Tropical Storm Paine. Its vorticity signature, not very well organized, kind of elongated, as is 92L. So nothing's in a real big hurry to develop, but we do have these systems out here nevertheless. All right, so looking at the pattern and what 91 will have to work with down here, this is the general track area over the next several days, as we know, and it'll be moving across favorable sea surface temperature conditions with anomalously warm water. The water temperatures are warmer than average. Shouldn't have much in the way of wind shear to deal with. The La Nina here in the East Pac, extremely strong. I mean, look at that. I talked about it yesterday. You look at the scale over here. -4 to -5 Celsius below the long-term average. That should really make the Caribbean favorable for the rest of the month. And we have to watch that. And as I'm going to show you on the last tab right up there, it's coming. Wait for it. The MJO will be swinging back around later on in the month. And that'll make things even more favorable in this part of the Western Hemisphere, the Atlantic Basin, as it were, before we round out the month. So probably going to have two named storms. Again, this one, 92L, out here somewhere, and then eventually 91 should develop somewhere in this vicinity. And we'll just keep on trucking right through the alphabet there, and we'll just have to see what kind of impacts we get. Again, the first area of concern would be the Windward Islands down here. That's the vorticity signature in the Euro, the ECMWF. This is from the 12Z run today. And there's a few interesting things here. I'm going to be able to switch back and forth again. The power of Dr. Levi Cowan's website, that you can switch layers of the atmosphere. I love it. So let's go forth and show you. All right. So first, make sure I got the right color that I want there. So there's the coastal low, and that will eventually get out of there, I promise. And then here's our Vort signature for 91L. All right. So let's put this into motion. This is the EC Fast, as it's known. The ECMWF every 3 hour, that comes out later. So we'll stick with the EC Fast for now. It seems to have the best handle on the system. The GFS, not so good right now, but it's been having issues, that's for sure. So we'll look at the Euro, and in 24 hours, 91L does cruise through the southern windwards there. But all of that energy does impact the whole region. So please, please keep that in mind. I got a lot of followers down there on YouTube and Twitter, and you all know, you know the deal. And this will be coming through. Definitely want to hear from you. How are conditions down your way? They're going to go downhill starting tonight for sure. Our system up here kind of amplifies a little bit more of a signal there as it backs up. Now let me just go back to where we are, and then you look where we go tomorrow. Yes, it does retrograde back to the west. It's like, come on, get out of here. Anyway, 48 hours out, it finally starts to lift out our system over here, the leftovers of Ian. Weekends opens up into a trough, and it kicks out of there. This is our 91L that we're watching, and over the course of the next few days, that's 48, there's 72. It amplifies a little bit, and then finally by 96, it should be a well-developed tropical cyclone by this point, if not sooner. I mean, the models have not done real well for sure on intensity this year. Things seem to have, once they get going, they seem to get going stronger, and the global models are playing catch-up. But it is a fairly favorable pattern overall. And what I want to do is I want to switch over to the upper dynamics and show you the height anomalies in the atmosphere. So the departure from normal at 500 millibars up in the atmosphere, it's about 20,000 feet, depending on how the atmosphere is behaving. And what we're looking at here is these reds show a thicker version of the 500 millibar layer than normal. That's the easiest way to describe it. So another way to describe it, if this was not here, this would easily gain latitude and move up into the Gulf of Mexico. So this air is thicker and denser in the atmosphere. It's a ridge, mid-level ridge stretching all the way across, and this should be what saves Jamaica, the Caymans, Cuba, and the Gulf of Mexico. It should be. Now this is 96 hours out. This feature will either get stronger, stay the same, or get weaker. Those are the three options. We don't know yet. That's 4 days out. Hopefully the guidance has a good handle on this. But what's good for some areas, Jamaica, the Caymans, Cuba, the Gulf Coast, whatever, might be not so good for Central America. And this could come crashing in to Nicaragua, and that could be a big problem, especially if it's intensifying. Remember 2020, we had Eta, we had Iota down there, and it was just terrible. And one of them was a Cat 5, so you know that ridge stays intact there, but by day 6, it's still there. 7, it gets even stronger, and you can even see the height lines growing in here themselves. 591, that's pretty thick in the atmosphere if you know your meteorology. So the chances that this gains latitude are pretty slim overall, so that even the Yucatan over here, Belize and the Yucatan of Mexico, should be okay. But it's still too early to say that with 100% certainty. But as far as U.S. interest, and I know there's a lot of concern in Florida, the pattern does not suggest at all with that anomalous, I mean, that is exactly what this shows. This is your anomaly. There's more high pressure than normal by just a little bit. It's about a 6-meter difference in the atmosphere. It's the way the atmosphere is measured. That big balloon of air, so to speak, just a little bit bigger. That's a good way to look at it. And that'll keep whatever this develops into more than likely to the south. But we'll watch it. You never know until it has actually happened, right? All right. So we might escape that for the lower 48, but the MJO looks like it will be eventually swinging around. It's going to go through the maritime continent region and into the Westpac, and then we got this one member here that begins to show what could be coming. It could swing on around. You can just interpolate this, that it'll eventually get into phases 8 and 1, and that will favor the Western Hemisphere, and especially the Caribbean, Southern Gulf of Mexico, Southwest Atlantic, towards the end of the month. The last half, the last third, something like that. So we still have a ways to go here. Even despite the sea surface temperatures cooling off, they're not cooled off yet, and this ridging that we're seeing setting up, that'll prevent fronts from coming down and further mixing things, and we might even see just a little bit of a rebound in some of the water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, especially if we get some southerly winds pushing that warmer water back to the north. Ian came in and kind of disrupted things. That is trying to rebalance itself a little bit, but I think we're going to slow down the cooling process of the Gulf of Mexico. And again, we might even reverse it just for a few days as well. Nothing substantial, but without any big fronts coming down. Because if there's a big front coming down, it would scoop up what that it would be Julia or whatever the L storm is. I can't remember off the top of my head. If the one out in the East Atlantic doesn't get named first, this would be Julia. A big front coming down would scoop it up. So we'll see. The pattern's going to be interesting the next few days to 2 weeks, I think, for sure. And that's kind of the bottom line here. All right, I'm all finished up. Let me get this online for you. Don't forget, on YouTube, please like the video. The thumbs up does help the algorithms, whatever that means. Share it with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues across the hall from you, whatever. Let them know what we're doing here at HurricaneTrack. I do appreciate it, and it helps grow what we are trying to accomplish. And otherwise, have a great rest of your Tuesday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a part of your day. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow morning.